Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's CX Connect, brought to you by Speech Tech, CRM, and Smart Customer Service, and our platinum sponsor, Concentrix. I'm Bob Fernikes, and I'm the publisher of CRM Magazine, and I'll be the moderator for today's broadcast. This is actually our first virtual conference, although we've been doing webcasts since 1997, so we've done hundreds of them in the past. The conference itself will run today, tomorrow, and Thursday. You can find out what sessions are available just by going to our website and taking a look at the schedule that we've got up there. So for right now, our presentation is titled Empathy and Optimization, a Great Duo for CX. But before we start, I just want to explain how you can be part of this. If you have a question during the presentation, you can type it into the question and answer box. There are two boxes. One is for chat, one is for question and answers. If you put your questions in the question and answer box, it makes it a lot easier to get to it at the end of the presentation. Also, I just want to mention that if you stick around to the end, to the Q&A section, we'll be giving away a $50 Amazon gift card to somebody live on the presentation. So please stick around. So now to introduce our speakers for today, we've got Andy Berg. He is the Vice President of Product at Concentrix, and Will McCain, General Vice President of Sales and Customer Experience Modernization at Concentrix. So welcome to the broadcast, guys. Andy, take it away.
Thanks, Bob. Really appreciate it. So, you know, when you do this ahead of time, where you're trying to think of, okay, what is most relevant and what's most needed in the contact center today, and in our space from a customer experience perspective, and where are things going and where are things traveling? One of the things that, you know, Will and I do on a regular basis is we brainstorm and we think about, you know, how this entire movement is shifting, what things people are expecting, and really, you know, what has changed, especially over the last 12 to 18 months, you know, in this space and in this world where customer experience matters. And, you know, we look at ourselves, we're a B2B to C organization. And so we've got lots of customers who are directly to their customers, but we feel like we're serving both at the same time. And so in doing so, there's lots of things to take into consideration. And as you look at what has been the hot topic over what I'd say 36, 48 months, it's been AI, and it's gotten hotter and hotter and hotter, right? So we see automation just exploding. Little companies, big companies, everybody's doing more when it comes to automation across the board. And the big reason is they want to optimize their contact center. So they want to transform their contact center in such a way that they can utilize more with less. I mean, that's really the value add that people are looking for. Well, as the pandemic has gone through, we're also seeing almost this resurgence of, well, we might need more interaction. We might need this empathetic portion of the interaction with our customers in order to really provide the value that we're seeking to do some brand differentiation in the marketplace. And so this has been the hot topic for this duo, Will and I, the last little bit. And we're like, you know, this is something we'd like to discuss. So we're going to do this fairly informally. We've got some slides, so I will show those slides up and make sure that you've got some material in that regard. But for the most part, this is really a dialogue about what we've been seeing in the industry and some of the perspective. And, you know, Will talks to a lot of customers. This guy has tremendous amount of experience in this industry, and he knows it very, very well. And he's seen the ebbs and flows. And so thinking about this and how best we could serve this type of an audience, we believe that this will be very, very beneficial for you to kind of start to evaluate this weighted scale of, is it a weighted scale of optimization and empathy? Do they go together? And hopefully you'll get a lot out of that as we go forward. So with that, Will, welcome to the program, and thanks for joining me on this, buddy.
Hey, thanks, Andy. I'm excited to be here today and talk to everybody. I certainly appreciate everybody's time. This will be a neat topic. You know, I think through the pandemic, empathy and optimization are key of focus, and I think the industry has really been accelerated in terms of what's demanded from our customers and our own internal organizations.
Agreed. So when we talk about this whole idea of empathy and optimization, there's this whole rote thing that we go through on a regular basis with our customers, right? Starting with designing the experience all the way to running the metrics and measuring how we've done. And we're going to get a little bit more into this whole outcomes based selling, because I know this is something that you're very passionate about. You do very well with customers. And by the way, I said this the other day in a different presentation with some analysts, is outcome based selling or optimization based selling only works if you have lots of before and after pictures, right? And so you want to be able to show before and after. And thankfully, we've got some of those before and after pictures. And so we're able to do that. But talk to us about your opinion on, from the designing of the experience all the way to measuring the improvement or the reporting of it, of where you see empathy and optimization intersecting with each one of those points.
I think too, something that's interesting is we get asked, why Concentrix, or why would you partner outside of your organization? Why would you bring in somebody else to help you with this? There's a lot happening in the industry. I think we're seeing innovation, especially driven by the cloud and the democratization of technology, developing into ecosystems that are really melding with each other almost seamlessly. But bringing those things together is a challenge for organizations. And so, of course, you've got things like time to market, but you also have things such as, am I getting the most of these new platforms that I'm deploying and trying to offer to my customers? And so when I talk to this slide, I typically, Andy, think about all the different things that Concentrix thinks about as we engage with our customers through the life cycle of an engagement, but also the ongoing customer success that we provide. So, sure, omni-channel meant something a couple of years ago. And today, the preferred channel is vastly changing, right? You've got changing demographics. You've got end users who are becoming more competent and want to communicate in their own preferred channel. I mean, think about it. A lot of the world has been locked up, working from home, doing what they can virtually. And now everybody's learning and rapidly learning technology. And so the different universes that people want to communicate within is probably first and foremost for organizations. I think of self-service, and in the past, a lot of customers were after it just purely from a cost optimization perspective. But now digital self-service is getting so good that we've got organizations who look at it as a differentiator for their own organizations. So we've got a lot of industries that could potentially be viewed as commodity industries, and that people aren't necessarily buying products or goods or services that are vastly different, but they want to procure and interact differently. One of the big examples we've all gone through in our history is Blockbuster versus Netflix, right? And so Blockbuster had an opportunity not only to buy Netflix, I think, at some point in time, but they were for sure that brick and mortar was the way to go, and that the customer experience was that they had that down, and that they knew best. Right. But what happened in the industry was customer preference changed. I don't necessarily think movies have changed, although we've gotten better graphics and things of that nature. But the concept of I want to sit down and consume and watch a movie hasn't. And so I look at listening to your customers, listening to various different organizations in terms of how would they actually prefer to interact with you. I know we're not traveling right now, although hopefully next year this is in person and we can join the crowd in person and see all of your faces. But think about Uber or Lyft, various different rideshare programs. The concept of going from point A to point B hasn't changed, right? Transportation. But you look at taxi cabs and various other different forms of traditional transportation, and now you've got customers who want to self-service from their phones or their applications. They want to interact with organizations differently. Again, the end products necessarily haven't changed, but we've seen a lot of disruption in moving share of those various different industries from one organization to another simply by, being more forward thinking and listening to how customers want to interact.
Yeah, I you and I have talked several times, and I love your Blockbuster analogy. There was that whole red box thing in between there, which is still kind of viable, but again, Netflix has probably taken the market share if we look at overall consumption rates. But that's important, and as we go through this process and recognizing, not everybody understands who Concentrix is, right? They don't know what it is that we do. I always say we are the largest, best kept secrets in the industry, because we really are, being as big as we are and doing all that we do, we really take it from A to Z. But we found that doing that not only on the agent side of the house, but on the technology side of the house as well. I mean, we've got the good recognitions in there, like from Everest and groups where they've put us up there as a leader, and we know what we're doing in that regard. But most people don't understand why, like, even we have such expertise to even talk about the topic. And I know you've tried to explain this to many folks, but can you explain a little bit about the fact that we consume our own products in such a mass quantity makes that big of a differentiation for us?
Yeah. So eating your own dog food, right? I think is the topic of the discussion.
Yeah.
Somewhere between 250, maybe 275,000 employees. And that's not trivial, but one of the largest companies in the world. And typically we partner with organizations, your global Fortune 100s and all the way down to mid and small size businesses, engage with us on the agent side of the business. And so we've got talent all over the world that specializes in various different industries to help augment organizations, customer engagement, or it could be internal workloads, et cetera. But each customer we work with has different needs. And so that means the technology layer that accompanies that for an organization changes. And so our perspective is derived quite literally from our own experiences working with a global set of customers in pretty much every single industry, to define their own customer experience and what the future looks like. So some organizations have more progressive cloud charters, over the last 2 to 3 years, and it could be driven by cost optimization, which is one of the things we're talking about here. It can also be driven by competitive differentiation. And in a lot of cases, and this is where empathy hits too. And the past 2 years, I've spent a large portion of my life helping customers help their customers is the empathy side of the house. And so sometimes people just want somebody to listen. And that could be as simple as dial tone. And there's a human or some element of I've been heard on the other end of the line. But as far as an organization goes, customers consume from us from everything from an outsourcer to the entire technology stack, to engaging with us on a project basis to work on particular workloads, and more being entrusted as a managed service provider where we provide the technology platform to deliver great customer experiences, and we work with them to drive optimization and things like empathy. But it allows our organizations to grow, specifically the contact center organizations that we work with, allows them to grow in their own career skill sets, allows them to learn inside of new environments. One of the things we talk about a lot, Andy, is how do you move from worrying about maintaining physical workloads, the patching, the somebody tripping over a wire, power, disaster response, the actual applications and development, the ongoing running of them, to shifting organizations to think about how can they become more valuable in their organization so that their main focus when they wake up every single day is, how do I create or build better customer experiences? And so we started engaging with C-level leaders and I would say CEOs of even large organizations who say, my customers are trying to either communicate with me directly. I can see it, it's more visible. I'm hearing about things in a different way, and they're going to their contact center organizations and saying, how can we communicate differently? And contact center as an organization is traditionally over the last 20 or 30 years has grown up in the telephony space, but more and more it's shifting to become this customer experience organization that's taking on all kinds of different channels and workloads. So,
well, it's interesting that some of the points you hit there. Technology helps drive empathy, right? So you need the human interaction, but the technology is driving the empathy. And the way that the technology, I've been in the industry for quite some time, probably too much that I want to share with everybody here because it definitely dates me. But you look at the way that this technology, and the terms, right? Customer experience, all those things, how they all play out, they are intertwined indefinitely. And a lot of those terms are valid, sometimes maybe even overused at times. But technology does drive empathy. And the way that if we look at the model of where things are actually driving towards and what sets the stage to get up to there is we have this layered technology and everything these days is as a service, right? And you even made a good joke about me the other day. So Andy as a service, right? And so, but I prefer to be at the end as a service Andy type of thing. But either way, everything is being delivered as a service. There is a cloud adoption, right? Some industries and verticals are slower than others at doing it, and there's for good reason, right? So there could be security, there's all kinds of different nuances, but we're seeing this across the board that the adoption is definitely increasing. And the challenge in our particular industry with customer experience, and I just want our audience to be able to know they're going to get the takeaways here as we continue on of how this empathy plays into this technology. But it starts at a base layer, right? It starts at those platforms as a service that we have out there. And there's big players and there's some smaller players that do platform as a service, but those are really, I actually think it was our boss who described it the best the other day, but it was essentially processing power, heat dispersion, and racks, right? That's essentially platform as a service. It's compute power. There's more that could be done to that. And so you've got that base layer. And then you move up to adding some components of application onto it where you have the communication platform as a service where we see, one of our partners, Amazon Connect, plays in, and that adds some layer to get there. But in order for that empathy to happen, it's almost like you have to be in that CCaaS layer. That's really where I get to, it's beyond just delineating the routing, but I'm utilizing the technology to make right decisions or help the agent even make right decisions. And okay, so I'm going to just share this with the audience. Hopefully you're okay with this. Will and I are smokers, okay? And by smokers, I mean, we smoke on barbecues, right? So we do smokers on barbecues. I figured that would be kind of funny. I can't see the audience reaction. It's more fun to do that live. But we both like to, smoke good, vegetables, meats, whatever, eggs, etc. But I bought a new one just recently, and Will helped me recommended a couple of them to me, and I finally found one. And after we built it and we're lifting it up, I scratched it on the patio, like just horrendously. It was bad. And my son was helping me, and he felt awful because he's like, "Oh my gosh, my dad's got this brand new smoker. It doesn't look very good anymore, and he wants it to look good before he, tries to burn down the house with it." So I was like looking for some touch-up paint for it. So I figured I'd call the company, and I said, "Hey, I just bought this like 2 days ago. We built it, we put it up, and we need some touch-up paint." And the agent on the other end of the phone said, where was that? And so I described to her, I said, "If you're facing the grill, it was on the right side." And over there, she goes, "Oh, you know what? That's just one of those pieces. That's like, we're welcome to the family. We're just going to send you out one." She didn't ask me for anything else. And there was an empathetic portion in that conversation where she understood that here was something I just bought. I did tell her about my son, and she was able to take notion. Now, you could do a whole bunch with this, right? She could have had an automated system behind her say, you know what, brand new customer, blah, 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 whatever, to help her make that empathetic decision, or she was just enabled through training on her own accord. Either way, just so you know, and I've been counting them, I have recommended that smoker to 12 different people, and I know 2 people who have bought it. That's how much business they just got through empathy. And so it's a big deal. And I love using that example because it does matter. And since the pandemic, we've transformed our world a little bit. We care a little bit more about talking to one another and how people are doing and whatnot. And the customer experience should have some resemblance of that in either a small or large part. But Will, as you look at this and what I just said, what do you think about, where we fit with all this, where AI fits with all this, and any other thing that you want to disregard from what I said before?
No, actually, that company you mentioned is on one of these platforms here. So it's always good to know. But, I think that agent was empowered, and, they may have been empowered through various different assist technologies to think about programs that might have been out there for them to focus on customer retention or increase CSAT. But agent empowerment is a big thing, right? On the premise of somebody, reaching out from a customer service perspective, whether it be on any one of the channels we mentioned, is that somebody's got a question, they need to be heard, they need to be helped. And ultimately, at the end of the day, the agent or the customer experience platforms that we build, whether it be AI bots, et cetera, want to be able to provide help or a solution, right? Nobody wants to get on a call or an engagement and start getting into an argument, and nor does the agent or on the other end. And so, analyzing that as part of your own strategy, I think, is really important. I think we've got some questions about your overall strategy here later. When I look at this, if you're in our space and you're thinking about, okay, what are these as a service terms mean? And they change, right? And people have different, meanings for these things. You're thinking about where the industry is going. So what are these players in the space doing to try to make plays to capture the environment? So let's just think about everybody working or learning from home, right? So think about a vast organization of children that have learned how to basically do what we do every single day, which is sit on, virtual collaboration platforms. But they're now trained inside of that environment. So, Andy, you and I probably grew up in Windows or Unix-based environments, and that's what we're comfortable with. And, now we had to learn new things. But the plays that these organizations are taking aren't traditionally based on, I release a product and it's got this feature and I'm going to sell this. You have to actually take a look at what are these organizations trying to do strategically from an investment perspective to try to capture or create these new collaboration platforms or, et cetera, the things that might be called out there in the industry. And so there's been a couple of acquisitions even recently in the industry. You've seen Nuance and Slack purchased by large organizations, some of the biggest purchases I've ever seen in this space. You've seen organic growth and massive investment in some of these technologies, and some of these technologies we're talking about are some of the fastest growing things in the cloud space. But think about, a lot of times customers ask us, well, can I get a feature to feature comparison list? Well, that might help serve your needs now, but are the needs and the metrics that you're measuring really what you're trying to achieve? And where are these organizations, these logos, et cetera, where are they going in the future? And that could be 3 years, that could be 5 years. But I promise you, each one of these organizations is thinking long and hard about, how do I build a platform that enables people to work in my environment and empower the rest of their organization on a day-to-day basis, right? That's mind share. That's always been the software game, et cetera. The other thing too is, I don't think you get here from a thought perspective until you figure out how to it's like, you know, your basic human needs, which is, you know, shelter and food and security, et cetera. But in our space, it's, does my platform work? Is it rock solid? Is it always going to be there? And only once you get there and you say, I'm not worried about the day-to-day triaging of the things that are going on inside of my environment, from which you can actually grow to think about some of these, you know, new ways in which you want to serve your customer. So I would tell anybody on the call to maybe think long and hard about, where do you spend your time and energy every single day? Is that actually driving the outcomes that you're trying to deliver? And that could be your own personal charter, your organization's charter, your company's charter. And do you need to reassess where you're spending time, and what sort of changes do you need to make in order to allow yourself to even get there, to spend the time to think about the broader picture, or more importantly, develop in those platforms, in the cloud, et cetera, to build out these kind of game-changing customer experiences.
I agree. Sorry, did you have more there, buddy?
No, I do like Andy as a service.
I just don't know how good the service is, so I just do my best. You know, you touched on something that reminded me of, I don't know if the audience is big Simon Sinek fans, but I talk about Simon Sinek a lot. I read his books, and he's got a lot of good things to say. And one of the more recent things that I've seen is, the mind has a hard time with negative thoughts. And he proves this, and he says, after he says that, he goes, I'll prove it to you right now. Don't think of an elephant. And right, all of our audience, yourself probably included, Will, we all thought of an elephant because I just said, don't think of an elephant. And the same goes with this customer experience path that we take on, is much like Simon Sinek would describe a skier. And I'm from Utah, so there's lots of skiers, and I skied throughout my my high school and college days quite a bit. But when you're skiing through the trees, you don't think, don't hit that tree, don't hit that tree, don't hit that tree, because you will collide into the tree if you think that, because your body is following a path of motion. And the same thing applies here in the customer, in our customer's journey, is you have to be thinking about, what's the journey and the path you want them to take on a regular basis, because we want to get to that outcome. And one of the things that has absolutely just blown me away about you is the way that you partner with organizations to look for what their objectives are, what they're trying to accomplish, but then really pull out the path for them to get there and show them how they can actually lay that down on a regular basis with technology and or people, etc., that you really lay that path out for them, because it's not always our stuff. So I'm building products for you all the time, so I'm trying to listen to which path you're going to so that I build the right stuff. But at the same time, sometimes I go, Will, why are you going that? You're going, a little bit different. You're like, yeah, but it'll still help them solve their ultimate problem, because you are looking for those outcomes. And I think that really makes us unique in that regard, and that we continue to watch those paths and make sure that we get to the bottom of the hill every single time, so that we can sit down and have a grilled cheese sandwich and tomato soup for lunch. So, I mean, am I wrong about any of those statements there?
No, you're not. I think we got into, when you're hitting on trying to get to a customer's ultimate goal. And our topic of the session is obviously optimization and empathy. We have lots of ways to measure optimization today. And I think, both you and I've got some things in the back of our screen here that talk about some of the metrics that we use. We're all performance driven, based upon it in our workplace. We've all got goals that we want to achieve. Understanding the goals of the individuals that I'm working with, as well as what their organization is trying to achieve, is probably first and foremost. I don't want to try to engage and provide a service that doesn't help those people meet those things. We want to focus on working with our customers where we provide value, getting out of the way where we don't. But the other one is the measurement of empathy, right? And I think that maybe is a new one for our industry.
How do we want to measure empathy? What components go into that, Will?
I don't know. It's a really good question, and I think it differs on a customer by customer basis. I tend to think about the people at the front line. So first of all, the person reaching out, whether it be on a self-service channel or to another human being, um, you know, on a personal note, I helped several unemployment and health organizations over the past 2 years. And a lot of these organizations were simply just focused on picking up the call. I mean, the sheer volume of calls and reach out and people just looking for help, just people looking to make contact. That was empathy. And that was the simplest form of empathy, which is I just want to listen, right? I've seen more advanced versions, like you mentioned, your engagement with the customer service rep, around the smoker.
Mhm.
I've seen it go even further to where AI, our customers entrust us to build AI and algorithms where a customer actually has a set score, such as they've spent a certain amount of money with us. We're going to go ahead and authorize an AI return or refund without ever engaging a customer service rep, right? And some people want that as part of their workflow. That's empathetic too, is I want to do business with an organization who just makes it easy for me to buy and sell and refund and repair. And instead of focusing and spending the time and effort on collecting the items back, or repairing what was sold, the opportunity cost is I can actually get a new unit or a new thing to them, provide a better level of customer service, spend less on the engagement. And now I've got a customer for life.
That's
Or
right.
mentions and tries to sell it 12 times. So I don't know, to you, what do you think about when you think about measuring empathy?
Well, I think you touched on it really well. And first, I'd like to say one of the things that is also pretty powerful is we try to demonstrate the same empathy for our customers that we want our customers to do for them too. So that's a big point. But you said something that was key. The medium or the interaction, the way that I want to interact is part of that empathy, right? So if I am, my oldest daughter, and the way that she wants to interact with a customer, with any company, she's going to want to do firsthand, right? We all know it's going to be through text, right? Because you can't TikTok somebody, right? So we all know that is like the first place that they're going to go. So the way that gets to the agent is almost empathy in and of itself, and I love that you said that. But I can measure things like first call resolution. I can measure average handle time. We've seen customers out there that they don't measure on average handle time because they want them to talk for longer. So I know of a clothing company that's what they do. That's one of their big mottos is I'll sit on the phone as long as it takes, even if it's just a $50 order. And they've made a whole business out of doing this, but it's because their empathy is there. And people still want to interact and they want to talk with one another. And we're coming out of the pandemic, and the Costco's and whatnot are filling up with people. Yet at the same time, there's still this need, and it's driving more and more. I mean, we're seeing this a lot in retail right now. Like,
Yeah.
this is huge. So measuring that for retail customers, whether or not they're still going to consume, has been a massive. I mean, it's a big deal.
So what do you think about some of these new AI measurement tools, such as sentiment analysis, and
Hmm.
what else are you seeing out there? How do you think organizations can leverage those tools?
Yeah, I think sentiment analysis would definitely play into that, right? And there are some. See, this the good and the bad for all the AI vendors. There's a ton of them out there, right? We have a ton of AI vendors out there. There's some big players and there's some medium players, and we partner with, we believe, the best breed, as well as utilize some existing stuff that we have in house for our customers. But the bottom line is, sentiment analysis is great. I think it's fine as a measuring tool. I think it's what you do with it.
Yeah.
So if you were to ask my opinion, I want to make some type of an RPA or some type of something to influence my routing decisions, my future conversations. So that's the first thing. The second thing is I want to compile it into an analytics framework so that I can be smarter going forward in the future. And so those two things, I don't see everybody doing. I see them getting the sentiment handing it over to a supervisor and maybe being actionable, not taking it, putting it into a larger repository and doing something more with it. Because there's some great tools out there to get sentiment. It's that back end analysis that I believe helps drive future empathy.
So the data and the way you visualize it, I think is the key to us in our industry becoming more relevant in our own C-suites and our decision makers in our companies. I've got a CEO of a major physical security appliance company today that pays attention to social and various different other channels in terms of how they engage with their customer, and they are really focused on deriving a new set of metrics to measure themselves that will help them achieve their overall goal of becoming a customer first focused organization. And so the leadership is partnering with the customer experience organization, which in this case is really the contact center team, to give them the freedom and flexibility. But also that engagement is not just a cost center like it traditionally was in a lot of places. They're actually saying this is first and foremost in a competitive, commoditized, ever-changing organization is how do I keep people in our ecosystem so that they're happy and they continue to buy more products and services for us. So showing up with different data to your leadership is going to change, I think, not only the level of investment, but level of focus that you have in terms of being able to develop new experiences. I don't know if it's caution, but it's a journey. It's not something that your leaders or executives get just immediately. You need to provide examples and help your executive team understand how the data translates to things like empathy. But yeah, we're definitely seeing more and more of the C-suite start to get really interested, and they're starting to build out charters and customer experience modernization charters or strategies are going hand in hand with cloud modernization charters.
Yes. Most definitely. And to your point, it's this, right? I mean, yeah. it's the scale. So when we talk about the great duo of empathy and optimization, they're not diametrically opposed, right? Even automation doesn't oppose it. They all work in conjunction with another. And there's this, the more you do with empathy, the more you do with optimization, you drive forward, and you're using automation along the way to drive to that further experience that we see here. And by the way, thanks for revising this slide. I really like what you've done to it. So Will's also a good graphic artist. He doesn't like to share that, but there's different places and components that you can do, you can add these components, and this is what not everybody does, is they don't look at their whole call flow, that whole entire journey, and where automation, where optimization, where empathy, and there again, it may be all three of those in various components and various places in the interaction. And I always say conversation, but it's not always conversation. In the interaction that you can insert these things. And that is critical, is where is it the most efficiently used? And so I love this slide because this just gives you an example of different places where you could utilize bots for that. But empathy plays a part in all these areas as well. And as I said before, they're not disparate from one another because I have an agent that can be influenced by some type of an automation to that agent, whether that's stats or voiceover, right?
No, for sure. Don't tell everybody I have PowerPoint skills, Andy.
Sorry, we just won't tell our boss because then she'll make you do your PowerPoint.
I think she's on here, unfortunately. So.
Oh, great. Well, I'm sorry about that, bud. I owe you one.
It's like telling your neighbors you know a thing or two about Wi-Fi, right? So.
Yes, or that you really enjoy mowing lawns. So yeah. Yeah, that is very, very true. We probably don't have time to digress into there's a whole nother conversation about neighborhoods these days and connectivity with that big controversial thing in the Amazon world these days. Before we get to questions, Will, is there any other thing that we want to make sure that we mention and leave our audience with?
Yeah, I challenge organizations to think about adding, this key question to their own staff meetings, to their leadership meetings. Is empathy part of your strategy? And how do you plan to measure it? You don't have to have the answer today, but I think thought-provoking questions will help organizations think about the changes where they really want to go. Move past thinking about 6-month or 1-year transformation to where do we want to be as an organization in 3+ years. But I'd also say too that, of course, we're in this business and we enjoy having these conversations. And so I'd invite anybody that wants to talk more and share their own experiences, as well as further along the discussion as part of their own organization, to engage us.
Agreed. And, like I say, we think about these things both internally and externally. We try to take our learnings, we share those learnings, and we've got the before and after pictures, right? That is a big deal. Before the car I restored, it looked like this, and now it looks like this. I'm trying to, keep that one on the light side. So with that being said, let's see what Q&A we've got in here. So I know we've got some questions. Ooh, I like this one. So the first question we got, Will, is what is the role of listening and understanding the voice of the customer before designing the experience? And you are a dang good listener.
Sometimes. So I think it's being honest and humble it's got to be part of your DNA and customer experience to wake up every single day and say, I could be wrong. I might have to reinvent myself. And of course, the data and the data snapshot is going to tell you what is there. I mean, outcomes-based contracts are where everybody should be, from a future leading perspective when we do that. But it's a culture thing, really, honestly, is if you're not listening to what your customers are telling you and you're not making that part of your regular DNA and the way that all the way up to your leadership meetings, it probably doesn't stand a very good chance to actually affect your customer outcomes or your product roadmap or who you are as a company.
I agree. We also, just so everybody knows, had a question. They wanted us to show slide 6 again. We didn't talk through this, completely, but I mean, the way that we've broken it down within our group is, our entire XP platform is broken down into messaging, contact center, and our virtual assistant. But we also, on top of that and around it, we have the voice of the customer as well as our analytics platform. So that is, this is just how we've broken it down, but it helps us when we look at those core products, how it works in the entire flow for how we build experiences for our customers.
Yeah, I want to add to that. A lot of times we talk to customers and they're worried about proprietary platforms, and am I trapped, and do I have the flexibility to move with the changes that come inside of the industry? That's not our approach. Our approach is obviously to build out a workflow, a branch set of customer experiences, but that platform has the ability to move with the ebbs and changes in the industry through different products and ecosystem. I'd probably argue that we do that better than anybody.
Yeah, we build some portability in there. I mean, we really do.
Well,
I hate to use that term, but we.
No. I mean, organizations have different needs, and there's tech disruptors in the marketplace, and we pay attention to that, and that's what enables us to do with our large customer base who wants to be on all kinds of different platforms. But the other thing too, I think, is the ability to consume some of the newest CX technologies, but not necessarily force yourself to become an expert in all of it today. So I want to go consume the latest and greatest in the industry that has to offer, but there's very few people out there from a skill set or availability perspective that have this. So now you're talking time to market, They're talking rapid release. I mean, a lot of these organizations aren't coming out with major product releases every 6 months or a year. They're coming out with them every month.
Yeah, that's true.
That's what we do. I mean, we obviously, it's in our DNA to learn and be curious. And so we take the latest and greatest and incorporate it into that platform you showed there.
And we definitely, and that some customers, it's better to be able to grab the best of the latest and greatest and be able to incorporate, sometimes than being stuck and having unportability, which we find a lot of customers in that circumstance. They consumed everything from one place, and it's not portable for them. It's a rip and replace type situation. And so we're able to come in is leverage those things that work really well and augment. We got another question here, Will, and that is, and this isn't Will, this is Will the question. Will AI get to the point of empathy? Not will get to the point of empathy, but will AI get to the point of empathy?
Well, I'd love to know your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about that. So there is far in the future, we're not going to get into, the Terminator and Skynet and all that fun stuff. At some point in time, AI will get to the point of being intelligent about sentiment analysis and about certain inflections. It will never, I don't know that it'll ever have true empathy, but it'll have trigger points. So, and by the way, I hate using the term ever, because that is really hard to say. There's never, and always really is not always, right? So I don't like using that terminology, but I think it's it's down a ways before it gets to what we would consider true empathy. What it will do, though, is the triggers and the usage of it will be more inclined and be better functionally for an organization based upon those things like sentiment, voicemail metrics, things that are said, keyword search, spotting. And a lot of people, AI is one of those things that, if you were to lift up the hood and see what's really there on a lot of AI platforms, it's a lot of algorithms that have been built based upon presupposed things that be put in place. It's the learning mechanism for those AIs that still has usually a bigger path for development, right? They have a bigger roadmap to get to those learning mechanisms. It's easier for me to write an algorithm than it is for me to write an adaptive algorithm. And that's the area where I think needs the most work to be done.
Yep, I totally agree. I would call technology today from an artificial intelligence perspective curious. I think AI is a curious technology, and that it can tell us a lot of different things, and it can kind of generate some levels of self-service and automation. I think where the industry is going from the true deep learning algorithms being built by these data scientists and programmers could open up some new doors in terms of the next level of AI. Quantum computing is probably 3 to 5 years from actually being usable. And when you get into the data science side of this house, that's what it is. So today you kind of have to train people how to leverage AI, and as a whole, it's a collective rising seas, depending on what device is in your house or how you communicate with your phone or what bot you interacted with from side to side. But also we've trained AI in terms of how to work with individuals. So I think it's a curious technology. I'm very excited to see where it goes. On a personal standpoint, I would say it's a little too curious. Most recently, my fiance's wedding dress was disclosed to me on my own Instagram channel because it knew that she was interested in that dress and picked it and everything like that. And I said, hey, I really like this. This looks great. And her face went white. And so it's a curious technology. Leveraging it to drive automation and optimization today is certainly we're well within that, right?
Yeah.
Getting it to provide empathy to individuals is where forward-leaning organizations are doing, with empowering agents, empowering the customer, empowering business models to actually listen and give people what they want.
Yeah. So essentially you violated the rule that you have in marriage. You're not supposed to see the wedding dress till the day of, and AI did that against you. So if anybody wanted, the moral of that story is AI doesn't have the algorithm in there not to show the wedding dress to the groom before the actual wedding day.
Yeah, that's the social dilemma, right? So
yeah. Well, I mean, part of it is that AI doesn't have empathy. It doesn't understand the traditions, right? It doesn't, that algorithm was never written because it still has to be written by someone. And that was just not on the scope. And, you know, who knew what the product managers were thinking? You know what I think about that. So yeah, so that is huge. So you know, the whole idea of AI getting to empathy, I think is just going to be continue to be one of the bigger conversations. You know, as we get to all this, one of the questions we've got now is where in the contact center is AI most effective? And I'm going to add to the question and say most effective in regards to empathy. And the answer, so in the way that I typically describe this, so this is totally an Andyism, is AI exists either pre-call, during the call, post-call, or to influence the call. So I typically put AI in one of those four categories, and there's plenty of AI that can run the gambit. If I'm looking for empathy, so based upon my objective is typically where I want to place AI. Now, I might want AI in the front end to take away calls so that I can get the calls that I need that human interaction, that human touch with. I may need AI in the middle, you know, during the call to help the agent do their job better and more effectively. A lot of times that's just being permissive, right? Is based upon this information, I'm writing an algorithm to give this agent letting them be more permissive with the customer or less, I'm not sure. Sentiment analysis could be used there and routing could be used there. But from an effectiveness standpoint, one of the things that I think we traditionally find, or at least I've found in the last 5 years, is front-ending a call with AI can realize the best optimization for rate of return on a general level. And that's just a very general statement. Again, it's going to be customer specific. And go ahead and tell me where I misspoke there, Will.
Oh, I think you're right. Out of the box, AI today is useful in some of the more rudimentary things an organization might engage in. Where's my order? I need to reset my password. And there are significant cost savings for organizations to automate those engagements. You know, more advanced AI or things that have been tuned, that's true CX or at least, you know, in terms of where the industry leaders are going. You got to spend a decent amount of time building those workflows and those experiences. Yes, they'll learn. Yes, they get better. Yes, they enhance, but it goes back to measuring the right metrics. But yeah, to answer the question, I think you know, each person has to take a look at why are people reaching out? What are those top reasons? And actually going line item by line item, experiencing them yourself, and then determining, can I apply AI to this to better the customer outcome, the experience? Can I optimize, you know, the engagement? And there's a lot of different metrics that could be cost savings or profit or lead retention or average handle time. But you have to go line item by line item. So, you know, you're going to get your most savings by addressing the key reasons why people are reaching out and automating those engagements to your best of your ability.
I totally agree. So it's almost like the objective drives. What's your objective? Once you know what your objective is, if you need help, then we're glad to help. But once you know what your objective is, it will definitely help facilitate that. I don't know. Kelly would like to answer this question live. I think we did, so we're good on that one. I think we have one more on here, Will, and we've got 4 minutes left. So digital transformation changed how customers interact. Will AI be the new expectation for transformation? How do we feel about that one? Because I like that question overall, right?
Yeah, I mean, so every person, you walk into or engage with is actually a customer experience expert.
Yes.
They may not know why or how the technology goes, but I can tell you what, every single person has their own opinion of how they want to engage and interact with an organization. And so I think that the listening part of it is understanding your customers, how they engage with you. That goes to the voice of the customer thing is, do you actually need to determine how people want to engage with you? You might think you're going down a great path and you've optimized it, really efficiently, but perhaps somebody's looking for more of an Uber-like experience or an Amazon-like experience or something to that degree. I don't know. I can tell you that today, so this is me personally, right?
Mm-hmm.
Today, I like using AI so that I don't need to engage a customer service rep for things that I think that I can handle and do myself. I know what I need to achieve. I know why I'm calling or reaching out to an organization. I just like empowerment. Too often I even see too the opposite end of the spectrum where organizations don't even empower their agents. They're forced to learn way too much in terms of their product set. They're not empowered from an assist perspective. They don't have a strategy in place to actually empower that agent to provide a good outcome. And so it just drives a overall poor engagement for both the agent and the caller or whoever's chatting on the other end. But I don't know. I really think it still depends. I don't think we're going to go hard right or hard left to one or the other.
That is a huge point, Will, because you just talked about being autonomous and having anonymity. And those two things you can leverage AI for. Now, whether or not it's really anonymous on the back end, if I'm collecting analytics on it's a whole other story, but to feel more, have that anonymity there. But yeah, you just, and I've got like 2 or 3 quotes from you I'm going to use even from this dialogue. But one of them is, I don't know that we're going to go hard right or hard left on this. There's something in between, because my perception does inform how I want to be interacted with. It may not inform everything else. It does inform how I want to be interacted with.
Yeah, I think it definitely it's augmented, experience, and it shouldn't be a hurdle or a nuance for somebody engaging or somebody trying to help on the other end. It should be there. And could be used as a preferred channel or method, depending upon the user's preference, I think.
Yeah. Yep. Well, I think we are at time. So I'm going to see if Bob is around. Oh, voila. There you are.
How's it going, Andy?
It's
Great.
going good, Bob.
Great job.
Thank you. Well, we got one more question here at the end, and we'll make sure that we send that out. So
great. Fantastic. It looks like we're at the top of the hour, moving up to the top of the hour. Definitely like to thank everyone that joined us today, everybody that asked questions, Concentrix for making this conference possible. That's all the time we have for today. I think Andy said he was going to follow up on that last question that we didn't get to. Also like to thank our speakers, Andy Bird and Will McCain from Concentrix. We will send out follow-ups with the session, archive. Don't worry about it. You'll receive an email address. Also, we would like to congratulate our winner of the Amazon $50 gift card, Deborah Wong. You are the winner. We will follow up and figure out how to get that gift card to you via email. Don't worry. And I would like to just remind everybody that we've got another session coming up at 2 p.m. on quality, reliability, scalability, and accuracy for the contact center, sponsored by Bespoken. So why don't you log on in another half an hour? Again, like to thank Andy and Will from Concentrix. Great job, guys. Great conversation.
Bob, thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.